Well, lot to talk about. We've got an RFU chief executive standing down. We've got Scudamore's payment from the Premier League, 5 million, which has just gone against what all the fans want and public opinion. We've got all the rugby union internationals. I've done the previews for them coming up this weekend. That's going to be really, really interesting as well. So I'm looking forward to them. And yeah, I've done a video on the NHL Department of Player Safety and their inconsistencies, which are starting to bug me this season, 20 odd games in. Right, basically, sport at the moment is reaching a crossroads for some sports. Some sports are reaching a crossroads. We discuss this on a nightly basis. And what we've seen with football this week sums up a lot of the problems that we're going to face is the over commercialization of sport. Yes, I understand sport is a business and it needs to make money, but there is a point where, come on, you've got to respect the fan base that has allowed your sport to get to this point. It's off the back of the fans. And I don't think fans are going to tolerate it anymore. We're already seeing protests against owners of clubs in English football on a regular basis and Scottish football on a regular basis. We're seeing fans really getting angry about ticket prices, especially with the TV deals some of the major sports have. Fans are really starting to run out of patience with the rip-off prices. And they are rip-off prices because if you look at the actual mathematics behind it, if you look at the actual numbers in place, when Scudamore took over at the Premier League, yeah, he's given them loads of massive TV deals. The latest TV deal, I think he sort of fluffed it a little bit. They were overestimating how much Amazon were willing to pay, and they really got that wrong. That still left some games unsold. Where's the free-to-air purchasing there? I can see a clear bias against the terrestrial free-to-air networks in this country for showing sport. I do not understand why. You get a wider audience, you get that advertising revenue, you get more people on board. It's healthier for the sport to have more competition. They seem to be obsessed with this Sky BT kind of subscription only kind of path. And what I find really funny is the amount of people illegally streaming who refuse to pay those exorbitant prices. But I think fans have had enough, I think, to a point of the unnecessary wage rises that players are demanding. The players, especially in football, are well out of touch with many fans. And what got me is I don't mind Danny Rose as a player. He's a decent player. He's a decent defensive player in the English game. But when he said, "I'm not happy with 50 grand a week. I'm not getting paid enough. I want 100. I want to double my wages and get paid more because I think 50 grand's not enough." I'm thinking to myself, you earn in a week what I'll be lucky to earn in 3 years before tax. It just shows how out of touch modern footballers are. They live in a bubble. From a very young age, they're not taught about the real world. They're offered contracts at 16, 17, 18 years old. They're offered big money contracts when the average person their age is earning minimum wage and is earning £4, £5, £6, £7 an hour, minimum wage job, possibly part-time, struggling to pay tuition fees at college or university, not got a lot of money, can't afford a place to live. 50 grand a week? Oh, no, I can't live on that. I need more. That just shows how out of touch footballers are. And whoever advised him to say that, his agents probably had a word in his ear, try and push for bigger wages, try and get a better deal. It doesn't come across well when you have that in the public domain, when you look at mainstream society and how mainstream wages in mainstream society aren't growing. Wages are just above pre-2008 levels for some industries, and sometimes it's even below in real terms. What we saw in 2008 is football. I don't know where this money's coming from because so many clubs since 2007, 2008 have hit financial problems. Some have gone completely out of business. Others have had to reform multiple times. There's administrations, relegations, liquidations, winding up petitions. Football since 2008 is not evenly balanced. The money is not filtering down appropriately. Clubs at lower levels in the professional structure across Europe are basically broke. Even clubs at top level are forcing to shut their academies down because they can't afford to run them, because wealthier clubs in the same division can just pinch their academy players by tapping them up and because they have so much sway over the associations, they can get away with breaching youth transfer rules until recently. And now we're sort of seeing a retaliation against that. Maybe it's a knee-jerk reaction just for the PR purpose. So we're seeing Chelsea and Everton under the spotlight so far this season in the English game. But Huddersfield have been forced to shut their academy, yet the Premier League sees fit not to support Huddersfield to keep their academy open, but to give Richard Scudamore £5 million paying off bonus and can keep him on as a consultant for 3 years on a higher wage than he's already on. I do not understand the logic behind that. He's in a consultancy role, he's getting paid more. It's wrong. This is where issues are. And I know this is a Q&A, and so far there's no questions coming in, so it's more of a podcast. It's more of my personal view on things. This is wrong. Absolutely 100% not acceptable. I don't know in what planet that is acceptable. This is the Americanization of European sport and the Americanization of European capitalism, which is more socially based, is sod the poor in society, milk them for all they're worth, and make as much money. It's just unsustainable. And I'm a social capitalist. I'm sort of on my other channel. I discuss politics a little bit in history and social history and film reviews, and media reviews. And I look at social things, but sport carries over into that. And what we're seeing is an unbalanced sporting economy, which is unsustainable. And this bubble will burst. And when it does burst, when the TV deals run out, or there's a massive financial run on football clubs, or something, there's a liquidity issue within football itself, let alone the wider world economy. When it collapses, it's going to be catastrophic, and many clubs are going to be facing firing squad of shotguns of administrators every day. The administrators are going to get their hunting rifles out and be pointing them at the club chief executives. And we've also seen with the failure of financial fair play and the failure to appropriately and properly enforce financial fair play, and then the fact they've allowed clubs to breach financial fair play and then skirt around the rules that were put in place is damning indictment enough of modern football. The fact that Qatar got the World Cup, in 2022 speaks volumes about the sport today. Other sports have other issues. Money isn't a problem. Liquidity and growth is a problem in other sports. But what's happening with football in Europe worries me. Long term, it worries me for the future of the sport. Down the line, it worries me with the fact they're now taking international football off free-to-air TV and giving it solely to Sky. I'm not a fan of that. I think that is wrong. They've taken advantage of the renewed growth in the sport with what happened in the summer with the England team and the sudden reconnection with the fan base. They've taken advantage of that yet again. They did it with cricket. They've done it with rugby. They're doing it with football. And there's going to come a point where people are just going to not be willing to pay anymore. And the average Sky subscription is paid for by someone in their late 30s, early 40s who owns home. The target fan base they actually want is that 18-30, that 16, 17, 18-year-old up to 30, 32-year-old person. Most of them don't own their own home, are on low-income jobs, are not as socially mobile as their parents or older siblings who are maybe 10, 15, 20 years older. And they're not willing to pay the subscription. And they're going to streaming. And a lot of them are going to illegal streaming. And whether you agree with that kind of thing or not, and I have to admit, occasionally I do as well. I'm sorry, I cannot afford a Sky subscription. I can't afford a BT Sport subscription. Not that I want to have BT Sport, because their quality of programming, as shown by their YouTube streaming of the Europa and Champions League finals this year, is pretty crap. I'm sorry, the fact that they've got a monopoly on the Champions League and Europa League, doesn't that go against competition rules that were laid down by the EU to say that there had to be a competition where it had to be shared rights? There's something a bit dodgy going on there, wouldn't you think? There are issues on a wide variety of things. Massive, massive problems. And then on the flip side of that, we're seeing a lot of sackings in the lower leagues. We've only had one Premier League sacking so far. That merry-go-round, that's got to be expensive. The amount of restitution managers have to get in compensation payments written into their contracts. That's got to be eating into club funds a lot. I do worry about the sport that I used to love, but it's not my favourite sport anymore, and I've done videos on that. So if you're watching this podcast or this stream later on, seriously check out my views on my favourite sports and my favourite teams. And football doesn't rank highly anymore. And it's because of these issues that are going unresolved with the corruption and the money and the greed and the simple fact that the basic fan, the average fan in the street, has been taken advantage of and has been milked for too long by the sport. The sports governing bodies have allowed this over commercialisation and the lack of respect for the club fan base. People actually put the sport where it is by turning up to games during the tough times, buying tickets, buying shirts, and buying season tickets, and they've taken advantage of about 95% of football fans. Those corporate fans can sod off; they're killing the game. But the actual hard-working, working class, middle class football fan who goes down every couple of times a season because he can't afford to go to a full season anymore because ticket prices are unsustainable because they are. Back in the day, 70 quid could buy you a family of 5 ticket for a game. Now it buys you 1 ticket. That doesn't buy you a family ticket. So it's gone horribly wrong at the top level. And the lower level is suffering as a result because the TV money and the cash and all that is not flowing down at appropriate levels to get into the game. So, yeah, there are problems. A lot of problems. Hell of a lot of problems. And FIFA and UEFA and the national governing bodies are doing nothing to resolve these issues. Nothing. There are wider problems with football, including corruption and match fixing, but on the basic level, football is not sustainable for average fans anymore. They're being priced out. And there's going to come a moment where there's going to be a lot of empty seats at Premier League games for TV, which looks really bad when you try and sell a product abroad saying this is a successful league. This is the best league in the world, apparently. Because fans are turning off. Fans are turning off. And I see that online. I see it in discussion boards online and fan forums. Fans are turning off in droves, and I've seen it on other YouTubers who have live streams on exactly the same issue. And the amount of people I refuse to go to a game, I can't afford to go to a game, I can't afford the subscription for the TV, I refuse to pay for the subscription on the TV, it's too expensive. The replica shirt's too much, player wages too high, can't afford tickets, It's a regular thing. It happens. It's just coming up all the time, and I don't know how much more sustainable the current trend is going forward. I don't know how sustainable it can be to continue along the lines that we are. My other videos today, all my videos today have been basically on the rugby union internationals. I've done my previews on them. Some very interesting matchups actually. Wales making a lot of changes against Tonga. Big risk there, could backfire. This is Warren Gatland's last autumn in charge before the World Cup. That's a massive risk Gatland has taken. Second time he's done that. He did it against Georgia. Basically backfired there. Really stuttering performance, and he lost that game. Tonga are a little bit better than Georgia, I think you find. And they have a far more threatening backline that could easily tear the Welsh apart should that all go wrong. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens there. Scotland, South Africa, that's going to be a brutal encounter. No holds barred there. And Ireland are playing the All Blacks, the two best teams in the world, going head to head. That is a mouth-watering prospect. Of that, I have no doubt. The weather's going to have a massive part to play in most games this week. And apart from the Wales game, because they keep the roof shut at all times because they think that they can play indoors and they don't test themselves against outdoor conditions. Trying to get home advantage, but it doesn't really help them in the long term. If you want to play test rugby at international level in the tournament, for example, if you're playing in Japan, you can have similar weather like this in a Japanese autumn. You might want to play outside and test your skills outside in a Northern Hemisphere autumn international. The weather's going to have a massive impact, massive impact this weekend in the rugby. The weather, the conditions are going to have a huge impact on how the games are played. If the weather stays reasonably dry and low winds and sunny, it could be good. If the weather starts to get a bit rainy, windy, cold, it could be a different kettle of fish when it comes to handling skills, scrummaging, the forward battle, the breakdown, refereeing with common sense. There could be a lot of scrums, could be a lot of drop all the line out that becomes important. But looking at the weather now, it gets dark very, very quickly. The temperature hasn't been too bad, but it's going to have a massive effect on the games this weekend, apart from the Wales game because they've got the roof shut. It would be nice to see them open the roof because it might actually nullify Tonga's attack then, because Tonga like to throw the ball around. They like to, really sling the ball around and play with no structure. You put some wet weather into that, those handling skills got to be retested, and it could be advantage Wales. But they decide to keep the roof shut, which again, with the amount of changes they made, could seriously backfire. The NHL Department of Player Safety. This is a point where I'm getting really frustrated now. Ice hockey is my favourite sport. NHL is my favourite league. We have seen 20 odd games of the season, massive inconsistencies with officiating. Massive inconsistencies with the NHL officiating on the ice and the Department of Player Safety and George Paros when it comes to suspensions, fines, and supplementary discipline. If they are serious in taking headshots, accidental or deliberate, out of the game, if they are that serious in taking a stand against head injuries and taking out of the game, why are they so inconsistent with their Department of Player Safety dishing out suspensions? Tom Wilson gets 20 games. Brendan Lemieux gets 2 for the same hit. Tanev on Kuznetsov runs Kuznetsov over, doesn't get a thing. Morrissey gets 5 for the hit on Oshie. We saw Matheson get 2 games for his hit on Pettersson, which is a similar type of hit. These are the examples that, as a Jets fan, I'll talk about, and watching the preseason games, because there was obviously accessibility of them. There was more time of the day. Had more time to watch a lot of the preseason games to get ready for the season. I'm really scratching my head at a lot of the decision making done by George Paros and his team. Whether there's directives from above, whether there's pressure from within the game, politics wise, he was always going to be put in a catch-22 situation as the guy in charge of Department of Player Safety. But it's frustrating because whether you agree or disagree on is it a suspendable play or not, if they've already said that is a suspension, you should surely think that similar incidents would be suspended accordingly and reviewed accordingly. And they're so inconsistent on length of suspension. And the referees on game night are missing blatant foul play or are not calling things that another referee would. So there's no consistency within the officiating ranks on the ice. It is infuriating. It's driving me round the wall. It really is, because where the NHL leads, other leagues follow, and we've seen inconsistencies with discipline over here in Europe, in the UK. I'm not 100% filled in on the European leagues, but where the NHL leads, the European leagues follow suit very quickly. If the NHL is setting precedent and saying that this is a lengthy suspension for insert foul play here, and then a week later a similar incident happens with another player, and it's a different type of suspension, maybe a lot less. That inconsistency goes across the Atlantic to here in Europe, and it leads to the further head scratching that is a regular thing that I have. I'm really stumped by the massive inconsistencies to do with a variety of suspendable offences or non-suspendable offences. Like, what is a suspension? What is a dirty play? I'm really concerned with the direction the NHL is taking, because it's not taking one. And whatever you think of George Paros as a player, he's been put in a very difficult position by the NHL, because I don't know if he's getting the full support he needs to have to say, I'm suspending this player, I don't care. Because when an independent arbiter comes in and knocks off a percentage of games from Tom Wilson's suspension, I think it's 4 or 6 games he got knocked off, and gets all his lost wages back and has to pay part of his fine and got to pay part of his fine back, doesn't that undermine the Department of Player Safety putting out and saying, you have been a repeat offender a lot lately, we are taking action against you? Because I don't know what to make of it all. I really don't. I regularly rail against officials having poor games. And that's probably the armchair fan in me a little bit, but there has to come a point where there has to be some consistency somewhere. The only thing they'll be consistent for this season is to be inconsistent, and fans are going nuts. NHL fans are ripping their hair out. All 31 teams. They will. Every team will rip their hair out this season. Like last season with goalie interference, we had no clear guidance of what goalie interference was until about 3 months before the playoffs, and then there was a directive saying leave the call on the ice as standing. Well, we saw goalies taking headshots, and I was just infuriated by the lack of consistency when it came to goal interference last year and what is and isn't goalie interference. Hello, 76ers. How you doing? So yeah, I mean, officiating is a big thing. So I don't know. The last couple of live streams, I've ranted a little bit about certain things, and rightly or wrongly, you may find it entertaining, you may find it funny, but I think the reasonable debate part of some of these sports debates is gone. I think, especially with the English Premier League, with paying Scudamore 5 million over 3 years, and then paying him a consultancy role as well, which is worth more than his actual salary now. When the new executive comes in, is wrong. Um, the Premier League did not support Huddersfield when their academy was forced to close because they couldn't afford to keep it open because bigger clubs were tapping up their players, and they even said, "Look, we had this problem." Um, did the Premier League help them? Did the FA help them? Nope, nope. But they're willing to pay the former chief executive £5 million. And there's a big debate about grassroots sport, not just football, where the funding comes from, and how they channel the funds in, and how they develop playing facilities. I do have the information available. I do have a lot of literature available to read up on things. It's just the NBA. I'm happy to do videos on particular, the history of the NBA. I've done that. If there's a particular negative incident, I could go and look on the history of the NBA. I'm more than happy to do that. Um, but as I said before, basketball is not a sport that really excites me as much as rugby league or rugby union or ice hockey or or cricket. The sports that I'm really passionate about, I have more knowledge on. I'm more than happy for you to send me a link to an NBA website, or send me several links to NBA articles. I have done the odd video on the NBA. I will admit, when LeBron James was signed by the Lakers on that obscene contract, I was very critical of that contract. Not because is he not worth the money, because the NBA salary cap works very effectively. But there is a debate, especially over here in Europe right now, to do with player salaries and the amount of money at top end sport, and how. Oh, the Cavaliers. It is interesting when a big name player leaves a team and goes to another team in the same league, um, and the effects that has on a dressing room. Well, what that says to me is, obviously it's not just LeBron James. It's not. There's obviously a link there, but it's not just LeBron James moving teams to the Lakers. It's not just that. There are clearly other forces at play within that setup to cause such a poor run of form. You have to look at the players currently there and the coaching staff currently there to get an understanding of why they're struggling. Because we've seen, like, Vegas Golden Knights last year get to the Stanley Cup final. This year, their form is middling. They're plodding along just about under 500. They haven't been great so far this season. They've had a couple of flashes, but for the most part, they're not the same team. Yes, some players have left, some players have been brought in, some players are injured, some players are suspended. So you have to look at the best way to look at it is what reports are coming out of the Cavaliers. What are the local media reporting? What are the local sources reporting? What are the trusted sources reporting? Is there a disagreement within the changing room? Is there a disagreement with coaching and players? Is there issues behind the scenes where the owner's a bit hands on? But the issue that I have is, while I love sport and I will casually watch the NBA, I'm not invested in the NBA because it's a sport that I never enjoyed playing and or watching as a kid. I just didn't really enjoy it anywhere near as much as watching rugby union and rugby league and the NHL and cricket and European football, so soccer to you. I never really felt that connection with the sport. Yes, I watched Space Jam, and yes, I remember the Chicago Bulls being a big thing when I was a kid, and lots of kids my age at the time were wearing Michael Jordan jerseys. It was a big thing. Um, I don't really have, I do have my Xbox. There are other things going on outside of the YouTube channel on a personal level that require my attention. Um, a close friend of mine is going through a tough time, and I'm helping them out a lot at the moment. So um, I understand what you're saying. I understand that they are doing this free play stuff. I don't actually have the game, um, and again, I don't do sports games. I appreciate what you're saying, but sports video games for me, I got bored of quite some time ago. They're very generic. Um, you know, I understand why people like them, of course, but for me, it's not something that I enjoy doing as much. Um, I don't know what it is. I never really fully got into the NBA. I never fully got into the sport of basketball. I never really enjoyed playing it at school um, because it just didn't suit my abilities. It didn't suit what I was good at. Um, and you know, when you when you're not enjoying it and you're not very good at it, you tend to feel isolated and ridiculed by the kids. So I just didn't want to play. I didn't enjoy it. You know, it wasn't my thing, and it could be a cultural thing. I mean, I'm from the UK, so we there are other sports that are more popular. Um, that um, there's more exposure to when it comes to the media and the journalists and the channel and the sports networks and in the culture of our sport. Basketball is quite low down on the list of sports in this country. A lot of people do play it, and a lot of people do support it. And yes, the NBA has taken games to the O2 with the Boston Celtics regular season last year. I think they took a couple of games to the O2. But I never got invested in the sport. I couldn't really. I just didn't feel a connection with the sport, and for whatever reason that may be. I don't really like an NBA team. I don't really have a connection with the sport in the sense that I will casually watch and I'll just flick through and I'll go, okay, this team's doing well, that team's. Uh, yeah, I'm a train mechanic. Of course, you put oil in the car. It's what a sub's for. Really random comment there, making no sense, Mr. Carlo. Um, I think you're on the wrong live stream. Um, I don't really. I just put my onions in a blender. I'm lazy. I put it in a blender. It just blends them. Put them in the pasta. There are ways to avoid the eye-watering thing. Um, Ventilation helps. But no, I don't really follow an NBA team. I don't really feel overly connected to the sport. The few things I will say about the NBA, though, is the salary cap works. It's one of the few salary cap leagues where all the teams seem to, as far as I'm aware, there's been no major salary cap breaches and major salary cap controversies. All the teams and all the players and all the owners seem to have bought well into the salary cap system that the NBA league office has put in place. It's one of the most profitable leagues in the world. I know they're the best paid athletes on average because of the top earners like LeBron James with their contracts skewing that average somewhat. But I, it's an interesting one. It's an interesting debating point. I, I've never really felt a connection to any NBA team. There's nothing that says to me I like that their colours or the way they play or the fact they win or they lose or I like an underdog story. I just don't have that spark with the sport that I do with other sports. But the funny thing is, if you notice, most of the sports that I like are the brutal full contact ones where there's big body crunching hits. And as someone who used to play rugby at youth and at amateur level, um, you know, the Orlando Magic, yeah, there's obviously Florida is an interesting state to look at pro sports in the US because for some reason, if you look at the state of Florida, um, it's a far wealthier state than some of the states surrounding it. There's a lot of money in Florida that isn't necessarily in Alabama or Arkansas or Georgia. And it's really interesting the social dynamics of Florida. There are a lot of pro sports teams in Florida, and of course, David Beckham's MLS franchise will be in Miami in the next year or so. There's a lot of um, there are a lot of sports teams in Florida for the size of the state, the population of the state. Yet for some reason, a lot of the teams do fail to attract fans. Doesn't matter how successful or good or bad they are. A lot of empty seats at Florida based games. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Jacksonville Jaguars, Miami Heat, the Florida Panthers, to name but a few. I mean, the Tampa Bay Lightning do sell out their arena, but the other teams that I listed really do have a lot of empty seats in their arenas and stadiums. I don't know why that is. It's a strange one because locations in the US and Canada, because we can't forget Canada in the North American professional sports, sell out week on, week out, consecutive sellouts. You go to BB&T Centre, no one in there. You look at it on the TV, no one in there. So that's an interesting one that your friend's an Orlando Magic fan. But if you look at the Florida-based teams in the North American major leagues, Florida teams from Florida, a lot of them do struggle to get fans in the gate, and I do not understand why. It's a great climate, so the weather's generally pretty good in Florida. It's a wealthier state than, let's say, some of the neighbouring states. It's in a better economic position now than in the past. It's a very interesting melting pot of the population of many different backgrounds and cultures, and I'm really surprised at the empty seats at games. You keep asking the NBA questions, and I don't really have answers for them. It was stumping me a bit here because, as I said, I don't have a favourite NBA team, and I don't really follow basketball religiously like you do. So that you'll obviously have a far better idea of what the sport's about, and what teams are good and what teams are bad, and some of the contracts. However, I will say this: when LeBron James did sign his massive contract at the Lakers, where they're trying to create this Kobe Bryant, LeBron James dream team in the Lakers with the Lakers, much very similar to the Chicago Bulls in the '90s. I was a bit surprised with the amount of money. I understand the top end talent in the NBA gets paid a lot. I get that. I get that they get paid a hell of a lot of cash because the NBA has got very good TV deals. It's got a very profitable league. It I don't know anyone personally who is a 76ers fan. I have friends who are basketball fans and are happy to say that they like the NBA, they like basketball, they play the sport casually down the basketball courts that we have in here where I live, and they played at school and they enjoyed it. I've never met a 76ers fan. I've met a lot of sports fans from all over the world wearing various sports jerseys, from obviously British sports teams to teams from New Zealand and Argentina. I've seen every sporting colour and every sport you can think of. I've because I live near London. When I go to London, yeah, I do see a lot of people. It's a very cosmopolitan international city, is London, and yeah, I've come across people with Boca Juniors shirts from Argentina, and Corinthians shirts from Brazil. I really have seen so many colours and so many teams and so many jerseys and hats and also. I, I think basketball here in the UK, because obviously this is where I live, is a very minority sport. There is a fan base for the NBA here in the UK, and there is a British basketball league. It's not the highest quality, I'll admit that, but it's still a decent quality. But it's not a sport that is well represented in the media in this country, and it's not a sport that has necessarily the biggest fan base in this country. I appreciate the fact you have a lot of questions on it, and you want to see more NBA content on the channel. I'm more than happy to look at some of the historical moments in the NBA, such as the betting scandal with the referee, where he did a documentary about 6 months ago, and he was interviewed, and he gave the whole spilled the beans on the whole situation with the NBA and that betting scandal and the links to organised crime and favourable refereeing that was forced upon him. He was basically told by league head office, "You have to give this team. We want this kind of final. We want this matchup in the playoffs." And that kind of controversy sparked my interest. Then I can start doing videos and looking at the history of some of the murkier goings on in a sport. I have done a history of the NBA video. I did a brief look at the NBA and I looked at the money that the league generates, the salary cap working, the locations that they put teams in. But for me, basketball is a sport that I never felt an emotional connection to, like I do ice hockey, like I do rugby league, like I do rugby union. I never really felt tuned into the sport, and I never felt that I could enjoy the sport as much. I will casually watch, and I will casually watch a whole game and sit there and go, fair play. They are athletes, and they are athletes. I'm not saying basketball is a crap sport. Far from it. It's a very, very competitive sport, but it's not a sport that I enjoy. And this is where I think basketball in the UK possibly is struggling to attract funding. Hello, Palace fan. To attract the funding and to attract the necessary playing and fan base that it needs. Buzz, 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 buzz on the old notifications. Um, back to some of my other points that I raised before the questions came in on a sport that I have limited knowledge on. The payment by the Premier League to Scudamore raises a lot of issues. And on the last two live streams, I did rant and rave a little bit. And let's just say I got a bit passionate about the state of the sport. The same arguments are going on across the Atlantic with sports commissioners in the US and Canada. And this is not a new thing. But at a time when fans feel let down by the sport, priced out by the sport, and the teams that play the sport in the league they love, and the sport they love, there is a crisis point within the sport of football in Europe right now. And I do feel that payment was highly inappropriate. And the way, yes, you are 16th. I think Palace will have a very. Watch out for the FA Cup. I think the FA Cup this year, you could have a good run and do something, and that could create some momentum for the team. The teams below you are far worse. That's what I look at when someone goes, "Oh, my team is this position." There are teams worse than you. There's a reason why you're there, because there are teams that are significantly worse. Fulham is the prime example of a team that is in crisis. And on the 31st of December, I will go and review where clubs are currently at in the Premier League. And I'll look at my Premier League prediction video. And I think I have all the notes written down so I can have a look and see where I place the teams overall, where I think they're going to finish, and where they currently are. And that's going to be really interesting. So I'm going to have to do a lot of research and remember my predictions. But a lot of the teams that are currently struggling, I had down to struggle. No, I think Palace can have a decent season. I think there's been a few tough days. We could possibly see some signings coming. I think goal scoring is a problem. They need to find another player who can just put 10, 15, 20 goals in. And that's the difficult thing with the overinflated transfer market, what Palace are willing to pay and what players would be available to play for Palace if they could be signed. So that is an interesting debating point, and we could discuss, the transfer market and the flaws within the transfer market. I'm not sure on Palace. I think the FA Cup is a very good chance for Palace to have a good run of form and get some form going. And of course, the first round, there's a couple of replays to play, and then we've got the second round. Third round doesn't come in for another couple of weeks. It will be interesting to see how seriously Palace take the FA Cup, and if they can use that as if Hodgson will use that as a way to get some momentum into his squad and get these players scoring goals. They need a bit of confidence up front. I think that's where the issue lies, is just goal scoring. If you're relying solely on Wilfried Zaha, you're going to have a very long season. I think that's Palace's weaknesses, that one or two players assisting Wilfried Zaha in the goal scoring and the creativity. I mean, if that can be solved, Palace can be higher than 13th. It all depends on the next two months when the FA Cup starts and the league form, and just getting a bit of momentum. And even if it's just scrapping 1-0 wins, just to get that winning momentum, and then goal scoring will come with confidence. I think some of the players are lacking a bit of confidence as well as running goal. But what should we call Tottenham? The homeless ones, the exiles, Exodus, chapter 27, the White Hart Lane story. I mean, I like football banter, but there is an issue within the sport when it comes to vile abuse that the sport hasn't cleared up. Some clubs have very tasteless fans, a minority, and other clubs are good banter and good humoured. Yes, you are Zaha FC according to some, but there are 10 other players on a starting lineup, and then you've got a match day squad. Without the support of that squad, Zaha does nothing. Yeah, he can run all day. That doesn't mean he's a world class player. Yeah, even world class players or good players need to have teammates around them, and 11 players putting a shift in to help each other. I do think other players need to start scoring, or they need to get a player who can put the ball in the net more often, because there seems to be a lack of confidence in front of goal, or a lack of belief, possibly. Um, I honestly think, yes, that they can go on a run. I think you lot could have a very good FA Cup run. Of that, I have no doubt. The FA Cup is a great momentum swinger and can really help teams that are a bit goal shy just to get some confidence in front of goal. I think that's part of the problem. But the teams below Palace, there are some horrific teams down there. We don't know what's going on with okay. That's going to be an interesting Man City versus Palace. That's going to be an interesting game. And it'd be good to see Mike, enjoy the game as well. I do enjoy his content that he puts up. It's it's a different way of looking at a particular sport. I mean, it's an interesting one with Mike, because obviously he knows a lot about the non-league as well, which a lot of football YouTubers don't. So that gives that other wider, knowledge, and that wider opening idea. There's a big fan base in the non-league. There's a lot of clubs in the non-league that, you know, possibly deserve to have professional status. Whether we will see the National League become League Three at some point, because most of the clubs in the National League and the National League South and North are all professional now, which is causing some financial issues for some clubs. But could we see the Football League extend another division with the National League? I can see it happening. Um, but the sport at the lower levels does have a lot of money problems. And this goes back to the Scudamore payment. There are a lot of money issues within the sport at League One and League Two, definitely, and the National League. There's a lot of clubs really up against the wall financially. And the FA and the English Football League and the Premier League, depending on the situation, are not doing enough to support clubs, you know, in a positive way. Oh yeah, there are worse clubs than you. Palace are actually a pretty stable club these days. But you've had your struggles financially, and you've had the yo-yo years of going up and down between the Premier League and what is now the Championship. But a lot of clubs up and down the UK, obviously Scottish football hasn't got a lot of money. We've discussed that to death on live streams on a daily basis on this channel since April. But in the lower leagues of League One and League Two, there's not a lot of money. A lot of clubs are really up against the financial wall, really struggling to make ends meet, struggling to pay their backroom staff, like their catering staff, their front desk staff, their ticket sales staff, their club shop staff. There are some clubs that are struggling for whatever reason, and they can't financially compete, and the financial structures in European football are flawed, and need reform, but no one's willing to reform them. No one's willing to do the hard work to, in the short term pain, long term gain kind of thing. They're really not. Football governance is failing the sport, and it trickles down from FIFA to then the regional federations such as UEFA, and then down. Uh, um, well, here's the thing. She's actually been put in charge for a variety of reasons. She's a TV executive. This is also a bit of a PR move by the Premier League, saying we're more inclusive of women. I think she is capable of doing it, but I think her gender has a part to play in her getting appointed. It's positive discrimination. There's been a lot of talk about not enough women in high enough positions in business, but she has had battles with Sky and has come out the winner. She used to work for MTV, on the Europe side of MTV, and then she worked for the Discovery Network. And she had battles and loggerheads with Murdoch and B Sky B over plurality of media, and the fact that Sky were overcharging her channels to be on the Skybox setup when Virgin and BT were charging them more competitive rates, and she won the battle. So when it comes to negotiating the next couple of TV deals, or renegotiating them, or looking at more free-to-air football, she's the person you want in the corner. I think Scudamore's been there too long. He got far too comfortable in his role, and the payout that he is now received is sickening. He will now get paid more in an advisory consultancy role, consulting her, than what he was actually getting on a yearly salary for the past 20 years. The issue with if the issue with it, I think, is more on the TV side of negotiating the TV packages and negotiating the sponsorship packages with sponsors for the Premier League. It's not the marketing for the Premier League itself. The Premier League is not the best league in the world, but it claims it is. I think Scudamore had to go anyway. He's not the messiah that many in the game believe he is. Most fans don't like him. The way the game has gone with the greed and the over corporatization of it, it's gone too corporate now. I understand football's a business and you want to make money, but the money's not being evenly distributed from the TV deals. The structures in place are not right. The cup competitions have been massively devalued, massively, over the last 20 years since they got rid of the Cup Winners' Cup. There's not enough English players playing in the English league, plain and simple, and that is partly down to the Premier League's existence. We were told that it would improve the quality of English player for the long term. It has taken since 1996 for England to qualify for a tournament semi-final, and it has taken 28 years for a World Cup semi-final. The Premier League hasn't had the positive effect as quickly as it should have. It's taken far too long. A whole generation of players have been let down by the Premier League. There's not enough English players playing. There's when the Premier League was founded, not a single Premier League club was foreign owned, and the percentage of English players playing was about 70 to 80%, maybe as high as 90%. That's not the case now. That is not the case now. It's completely reversed. We're talking between 30 and 40% on any given match day weekend in all four professional leagues within the Football League structure, from League Two to the Premiership. Anywhere between 30 and 40% on a match day, on a given Saturday or a given Sunday. Where if you compare that to Germany, Italy, Spain, France, the percentages are higher. And there's a reason why they've won more World Cups than us. Yeah. So, and all those countries I've named have won the World Cup since the Premier League was founded. So you can see what I'm getting at here with the Premier League not being all roses. The ticket price isn't it? The Future Force and Palace, they're going to be a pretty stable Premier League club. They could go up the table as time goes on. I think a couple of signings are needed, but for the most part, yeah, Palace are now a stable mid-table side with a positive, bright future that they may not have had 5-10 years ago. Has the Premier League fully benefited Palace? No. Has the Premier League benefited any club apart from a very six, 7 clubs at the top? No. But Palace can definitely climb up that greasy pole and get higher up the table. Of course, they're not the most fashionable club to play for, because you've got your top six, the big six, that want to basically hoard all the cash for themselves and not share the money and share the toys. But I can see if Palace do well in the FA Cup this year, for example, and possibly win the FA Cup and target it, and I think that's a very achievable goal. That will help with the exposure that Palace will get, and the prize money that comes with that is pretty good, and winning a trophy is always good. So I can see Crystal Palace eyeing the FA Cup as a good way to earn extra revenues and get some success. I think the FA Cup this year, many of the Premier League and Championship sides will take it more seriously than previous seasons, because it's a trophy that I think is historic and clubs should want to win. But if I go back onto the Premier League, it hasn't been a bed of roses, because the ticket price, that's something else I was going to get onto, was the ticket prices have skyrocketed with wages. Agents' fees are unregulated or unchecked. They can charge whatever they bloody want. Players' wages are just obscene. What got me was when Danny Rose last season came out and said he wasn't happy on 50 grand a week because it wasn't enough money. He wanted 100 grand. And I'm thinking to myself, Does he know what it's like to be on a basic minimum wage? Has he ever thought, since he's been through the academy system and then into the playing full time top level, has he ever been outside the football bubble since he was 14 years old, 15 years old? Probably not. Um, and what gets me is, a lot of players, especially at the lower levels who break through, come from working class backgrounds. But those that come through um, the the top level clubs through their academies, they don't seem to have this grounded mentality that players used to. They seem to have this entitled mentality, like, oh, I'm on 50 grand a week, I want 100. I'm worth 100 grand a week. Many people will be lucky to earn 50 grand a year. And on the wages I've been on the jobs I've been doing, I'll be lucky to earn 50 grand in 3 years before tax, maybe 4, 5 years. And I think that lack of touch with uh, with real people and what real fans are, which are working people. Um, People can't afford to go to games anymore. People can't afford to pay the subscriptions anymore because people can't afford to pay, feed their families anymore. The fact that we are seeing some clubs at the lower levels, especially the lower levels, are doing fundraisers for the local food banks and local homeless charities because they know lifelong fans are, well, starving to death. They can't afford to feed themselves. They can't afford to house themselves. Says a lot about the modern football and how out of touch with reality some of these players and clubs are. This is where I completely disagree with the Scudamore payment. I completely disagree with his consultancy role and the amount of money he's getting paid for that as well. I so yeah, I got very passionate about it on a live stream either yesterday or the day before. I basically um, oh yeah, no, the Premier League is not a working man's affordable pastime anymore. You got to look at the ticket prices. It comes up almost every live stream, at least one question or one debate on ticket price. Plain and simple. The over commercialization and the plastic fans, I call them. I call them plastic fans. All these corporate fans, I call them plastics. There is no link to community anymore. When you see a football player doing his charity work, he's always got to have the TV camera for fan TV. But when I go down my local ice hockey club and I look at the history of the team to begin with, from its foundation, and I look at the Elite League, which is the EIHL, which is the top ice hockey league in the UK. Okay, it's professional, and I look at the top paid players in that league, and I look at the Football Premier League and the top paid players. So in this case, Alexis Sanchez, who's on £34 million a year in wages. The top Elite League player is on about 100 grand a year. A year. Danny Rose wanted to earn that a week. This is the complete disconnect between football, with women knitting on camera and reading books, and other sports, and the it's not just the working man or the working classes or the middle classes or this class thing. Because as a sports fan, I've gone to football matches, I've gone to cricket matches, I've gone to test matches of cricket. Actually, that's bloody expensive. And I've gone to rugby union matches, and I've gone to ice hockey. I've gone to a lot of places to watch sport and watched a lot of sport. The corporate side of it is sickening. The paid attendance versus actual attendance. The fact that a lot of Man United, well, most Man United fans, like even Manchester, I mean, Man United is the ultimate glory hunting team for fans, with bandwagon fans. Man City are becoming that way. Yeah, there's a lot of and a lot of these clubs have waiting lists that are thousands long for season tickets. Yet there's empty seats at games because the corporate tickets, which are meaning you can't get a season ticket, have been given away and no one takes them up, and their class is paid attendance because the corporations have paid for. We'll have 10 seats on that row, please. 2 guys from the corporation actually are available to turn up. That means 8 seats can't be given to fans on match day. That's a problem. I think, how am I doing? I'm okay. I've got the doctor's appointment Monday for my shoulder, and we'll find out, what actually is going on with my arm. And there's still nerve issues, and there's still strength issues, and a joint problem, and there's something definitely going on in the mechanics of my neck and shoulder, which ain't great. But apart from that, I'm plodding along. Nothing special. Nothing special there. Just plodding along. Slowly but surely, still going. But where were we? Oh yeah, no. Also the joy and the atmosphere at some stadiums is really, really dead. Oh no, well, Wembley was ruined the day they rebuilt the bloody thing. Wembley has become a, a hot topic because of the collapse sale, and because of the criticisms of Wembley that have been there since it first opened. Club Wembley is a big sticking point. Yes, the corporate tier in the middle, that looks hideous for TV, but now it's all on Sky now, so we don't have to watch it. So I'm kind of glad they've taken the England games and put them on Sky, because I don't have to watch the flat atmosphere and the empty seats, because the FA are money grabbing. They couldn't sell Wembley, so they sold the national rights to Sky. That's pretty much it. I find that pretty sickening that, yeah, that middle tier is just corporate crap. I talk about Wembley and the Challenge Cup final, which took place a few weeks back between Catalan and Warrington, I think it was. And Wembley was criticised as the location of a stadium. And Catalan can only bring about 4,000 or 5,000 fans from Perpignan, which is where the team is based. But I think Warrington couldn't fill the stadium on their own, because that's more than the population of the town. And normally at the Challenge Cup final, you get all the jerseys of the Super League and Championship and League One clubs all turn up, and you have a lot of fans. And it was a half-filled stadium. The atmosphere was completely flat. It looked shocking for TV. The game was really good, but the viewing aesthetics and the atmosphere were shit. And that's Wembley in a nutshell. My cousin's been there several times. He's less than positive about it. Another cousin's been there a few times. He's also less than positive about it. My mate Ollie goes there for the NFL games in the international series, but he goes there because he likes the NFL, not because he likes the stadium. And it's an interesting one. It's expensive. I mean, Club Wembley is a flawed. People complain about ticket prices. That's another massive sticking point, is the price of tickets for games. So if you watch Mike does football, or Mike likes football, Mike talks football even. You get it out. Mike talks football. He did a video on the ticket prices for the playoff finals and the non-league playoff final, and he really went with both barrels at the FA and saying, "You guys are sick." And not long after that, this Sahih Khan wanted to buy the stadium when fans were already outraged over ticket prices. We've seen with Tottenham to use Wembley, a lot of empty seats. They never sell it out. They've sold it out once at Wembley. And they do take sections off of the top tier, and it's just it doesn't matter. If we can tell you've taped off and put under that the wire mesh over the seats, it looks even worse. Just keep them empty seats, for Christ's sake. Just please. I don't even know how much Tottenham are actually paying to rent Wembley, but the FA are making a nice tidy sum out of Spurs. Partly because Daniel Levy screwed up with the rebuild and doesn't want to take responsibility for hiring a company that can't, deliver a stadium on time. But I think on Fulham's situation, Fulham have got themselves in a mess because partly their owner's under, a lot of scrutiny right now, which doesn't help, which is a distraction, but partly because they can't defend. And they spent a lot of money in the summer with Jokanovic. He spent about £100 million. And yeah, they can't defend. Their defence there's no defensive leadership. There's no real leader on the field. There's no one who's putting their hand up going that, sod it, I'm going to lead you guys out of this. Don't even know their captains. Defensively, they are terrible. Going forward, Fulham aren't great either now. They were good at one point. They could score goals, but now they're looking really open at the back, really exposed, no organisation. No one's willing to take charge of that back four, that back five, or that back three, depending on what formation they play. No one's pulling teammates around and going, mark that guy, tackle that guy, push up, pull back. There's no one. The goalkeeper doesn't look confident. Just because Ranieri won the Premier League with Leicester and did a decent job with Chelsea in the Premier League, and he's obviously coached in Italy as well and coached at international level, I don't think he's got the tools and pieces in place to get out of the situation. I think they're going to be in trouble. There is what 6 weeks till the transfer window opens. He's got 6 weeks with this team. Obviously, the international break is helping, but he's got 6 weeks to work with these players on the training field and actually on match day and try and get his message across. But I don't think he's got the players and the pieces in place to actually be competitive by Christmas. By the time we get to the transfer window, they could be really up against it, and then there's going to be panic buying, which means they're going to overpay for an average player because it's the transfer market. And I don't know. They don't seem to have a direction, do Fulham. They don't seem to have a long term plan. They don't seem to have any idea. I don't know if Sahih Khan's the right guy on a football club because you've got to look at his American football team, the Jacksonville Jaguars. They're shit as well. This guy likes mediocrity and then tries to buy Wembley and say, I'm not moving a team that's crap to half of the stadium that no one wants to sit in. Um, there's a few clubs down there. I think Palace and West Ham aren't out of trouble yet either. It's quite tight at the bottom, but I can see Fulham getting detached a little bit. I can. They don't seem to have any fight. They don't seem to have any grit and determination. They have no organisation. They don't seem to have a plan of direction. They got to the Premier League and went, okay, we're here now. What do we do? Okay. Like Jokanovic, I can understand what he was trying to do with the attacking side of it, but defensively they just were hopeless. Which then I question about a lot of things. I would question, you know, what were they doing in training then? Were they attempting to outscore everyone? Because they're not going to outscore teams like Man City and Liverpool. They're going to be ripped to shreds 6, 7, 8-0 if they try to do that. But I don't know. I mean, Fulham is just one example of a club in trouble. There are multiple clubs that are facing a firing squad right now down the bottom. And we could debate that to death. Southampton are struggling, no doubt. But I do think Fulham are in serious trouble. When I looked back at all the teams that got relegated from the Premier League, Championship, League One, and League Two last year, all the teams that got relegated from all the leagues fired at least one manager, and all of them replaced managers that season. Some clubs had up to 3 or 4 managers that season. All the clubs that replaced their managers that were relegated, there's a trend. I can see Fulham getting relegated. I'm going by past trends and looking at how often clubs change manager in a relegation fight. How often do they survive? About I'd say 70% of the time they get relegated. I am surprised it's taken this long for a manager to lose his job in the Premier League, considering that the normal fare is a manager every couple of months. That really surprised me. That took me by surprise. But no, Jokanovic had several years there. He'd been there for a while, and I don't know what Sahih Khan was expecting. But last time they were in the Premier League, when Sahih Khan bought the club, they got relegated. So I don't see Fulham as a Premier League side. I don't think they're good enough. I don't think Sahih Khan's actually got the patience, which is a problem, considering that he wants to buy Wembley, but he doesn't have the patience to stick it out. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen with Fulham, honestly. But I can see them being very, very relegated. By Christmas, it could be done. They could be well done by Christmas. By the transfer window in January, we'll have a pretty rough idea who's going down. There'll be about 3 or 4 clubs to choose from, and 1 in 4 of them will stay up. Maybe there may be 5 clubs involved in a relegation fight by Christmas. That's generally when you work out who's getting relegated and who's staying up. Good judging by previous seasons. But you see, Wolves have adapted very, very well. Fulham haven't. Now, why Wolves have adapted very well? Very well. They also bought some defenders, and they got a world-class goalkeeper. I don't know what's going to happen with Fulham, but it's not good. Hello, Kemal. Good to see you, son. It's been a while. It's been a while. Top 4. Oh God, top 4 predictions. Oh, interesting one. Definitely Liverpool. Definitely Man City in the top 4. We could interchange the positions that that they finish, be it City first or Liverpool first. Chelsea are going to be, I think, a safe third, a solid third. Fourth place, this is where it gets open for debate because you've got Spurs, you have Arsenal, you have Bournemouth and Watford, who are making it interesting this season with some really good form. And who's that other club from Manchester? Oh, yeah, United, that team. Man United are making the top four. They're not making the top four. Spurs, their squad depth is going to be really tested. They're going to have to get someone in January, a couple of players, because one or two injuries, they're done as a challenge. Arsenal, I can see Arsenal making the top four again. I can see Unai Emery possibly going on a long run because he's shown he can go on a winning run here. They've got some good form. I can see Arsenal being a bit more competitive this season. But I can see Watford and Bournemouth putting spanners in the works in there because they're being a little bit more pesky than I think the established top six want them to be. I can see Bournemouth and Watford banging on that European door. So it makes it more interesting that there's a couple of new teams floating around the top four, top eight. Tottenham, they need squad depth, dangerously need squad depth. I can see them running out of steam again. Will Infantino be removed from his position? How long did it take to get rid of Sepp Blatter? And how much scandal and corruption? He's not going anywhere. He's not going anywhere. Considering how long it took Sepp Blatter to be removed, and even now he's still clinging on to a position within football and having a voice. I don't know. The whole financial fair play and the youth transfer saga that's ongoing, which all came out from Der Spiegel's leak, and then other leaks came out about that. There are we already knew there were issues of corruption within football at the highest level. We already knew that, and I'm not a big fan of this UEFA Nations League. I'm not a fan of the TV rights of it. Definitely being all on Sky, that is really a kick in the teeth for football fans who re-engaged with the national team this summer. Oh yeah, the home nations, apart from Scotland, Northern Ireland, Republic of Ireland, Wales, and England, the last couple of years, they've improved. They're doing really well. Let's put it all on Sky and really rip off the fans some more. That's an issue of governance and TV rights. But no, Infantino, he's going to be around a while. I don't think FIFA wants to have another leadership election scandal. Nothing's really changed from the Blatter era. They're still as corrupt as they were before. They're just a bit more public about their corruption now. That's basically what always happened. Nothing really is changing, really. But football's losing touch with its fan base because of its poor governance as part of the problem. What happens at the top filters down. Then you have issues within UEFA, the FA, Premier League, Championship, League One, League Two, and you go further down, and we could debate Scudamore's £5 million payment, which is sickening. We could debate, the fact that this Bertrand Traore situation. FIFA knew about that years ago. It's taken 3 years to get to this point. Why is it taking 3 years on a very obvious investigation? It could have been nipped in the bud and dealt with quite swiftly. They dragged it out. Will they backdate the transfer ban? Should they implement it? This is what it is. I mean, we've both been critical of Chelsea's youth policy with having so many youth players out on loan under contract with the club. But if FIFA have been investigating them for 3 years, they've done a really shit job because the evidence was blatantly obvious at the beginning. The fact they've dragged this out for so long, I think, makes it more of a scandal than it needs to be, and more of a story than it needs to be. The fact that Chelsea aren't the only club under investigation for corruption and tax avoidance and a variety of, there is some big news coming. And I think Scudamore's taking his £5 million and buggering off probably at the right time, because there are all these saying he's done wonders for the sport, wonders for the league. Then why are British clubs under investigation, especially English clubs under investigation for corruption then under his watch? Why has he got away with sexist and inappropriate behaviour in the workplace? And that was very well covered up. Everton, that's already been established. That was already in the news about a month ago. Everton tapping up a Cardiff City youngster. They also obviously tried to get Marco Silva from Watford at the time, tapping up allegations. There have been some aggressive contract negotiations with Everton. As to say, they've been very, very aggressive, and they breached rules on a youth player, I believe. from Cardiff. Talking about youth, and this is what angers me about the Scudamore payment that's been agreed, is Huddersfield, Premier League club, cannot afford to keep its academy open, yet Bruce Buck, your chairman, goes, oh, every club should give £250,000 to this retirement kitty. And I'm going, but the Premier League has all this billions, doesn't help out a member of the Premier League. This is why I find the payment sickening. There is a club at the top level of English football cannot afford to keep its academy open because things like Everton that have been doing with tapping up players, because the bigger, richer clubs in the same league have been poaching their players because they can offer them more than Huddersfield can because they are worth billions and are breaching financial fair play. Premier League, do they help them? No. Does the FA step in? No. Are Huddersfield forced to shut their academy down? Yes. Is that a disgrace? Yes. This is the issue that we have, and the Premier League felt fit to give Skidmore £5 million. And there were anywhere between 3 and 6 clubs that were not happy with this. Were they listened to? No. Nope. Nope. It just highlights many issues that are there. The fact that Everton have rumours of malpractice when it comes to youth contracts, and Chelsea, no surprise. The fact that the Der Spiegel leaks, as I'll call them, Der Spiegel undercover investigations into European football have highlighted many flaws. The financial fair play system is a joke. This European Super League, I hope they go ahead with it, and I hope it fails catastrophically. Because football without fans is nothing, but they seem to want to go down this corporate route more and more, and this greed route, and fans are not willing to put up with that anymore. It's like the La Liga plans to take games from Spain to the US. The fact the players are willing to strike over saying, actually, for once, we want to keep the fans happy. Yeah, well, we get paid exorbitant amounts of money, but we take the fans for granted. But for once, we're on the fans' side. It's just lip service, so they have some legitimacy for dragging their heels, not wanting to play. Why don't I do videos on the NBA much? I'm just not a fan. I'm not really a big fan. As I said earlier, if you watch the early part of the live stream, if you rewatch the whole live stream from the beginning after we've done with the video, as a kid, we obviously had compulsory sports at school, and when we had the sports hall, the indoor sports hall, the basketball court interior, it was one of those compulsory sports that we had to play in the sports hall. I never enjoyed it because I was forced to play a sport that I didn't like, and because I wasn't very good at it, I got bullied, and I got isolated by other kids, all the kids who could play basketball, because they were tall, or they had better hand-eye coordination, or they were quicker with their feet, more accurate shooting, and I hated it. And I was forced to play it by my coaches saying, you got to play it. So it's on the career, it's on your timetable. I hated it. I absolutely hated it. That's why I got into rugby and cricket and football, especially rugby, because I could hurt those bastards who were bullying me. I could actually flatten them. But I fell out of love very, very quickly with it because I was forced to play a sport that I wasn't very good at, that I didn't enjoy. And then because I wasn't very good at it, I got bullied for not being very good at it. So I didn't want to play. And I think eventually, my mum got involved with the school and said, look, if you keep forcing me to do this and not tackling the bullying, we'll go public to the press. And suddenly I wasn't doing basketball anymore. Suddenly, you don't have to do that anymore. You don't have to be involved in that sport. And then after that, they made this. They made basketball voluntary for students. So my mum kicked off. She basically said, no, we're not having this. Who I found the weakest one? Well, that was the problem. That was me. So I'll be punching myself in the no. That's why I ended up playing rugby, because then when they were giving it all that, I could put a shoulder through their jaw and go, "Bah, was it high?" He ducked into it, red. Yeah, that's why I took up rugby and got pretty aggressive. And my coach was like, "Okay, you're good at this." And my coach was also my maths teacher, and he worked out I was being bullied at school. And he basically said to me, "You know what? He goes, I don't care if you hit the fucking bastard, fucking hit him." And I was like, "What?" He was like, "Even if he's just passed the ball, you have to hit him slightly late. You make sure you tickle his bloody ribs, because he will stop bullying you." And eventually they stopped bullying me because they realised I was an animal on the pitch and I would more likely fight them than the opposition. And they were like, "Okay, this guy's an angry little kid, but he can run with the ball and he's quite aggressive and he doesn't stop." He may not be the most skillful, but he puts more effort in than everyone else. Okay, he's playing, and hence why I played. Um, and then I actually got half decent at the game, and then I changed schools and I went up an age group and I changed schools, and I had the same problems I was having at my first school, getting bullied and stuff. Went on the rugby pitch, and people stopped bullying me when they realised that I was willing to not only take the punishment but also dish out the punishment. I wasn't afraid of getting run over by um, a bigger player and get up and get in their way. They realised I wasn't afraid to take, headshots and elbows, and the fact that I was willing to also throw a few back as well. They eventually decided just to leave me alone. Because finally, they actually channeled my hatred of them into the opposition, and it paid off. Then I left the school anyway and told them, "Sod you, I'm never seeing you guys again." I've kept in contact with, I think, 3 people I went to school with ever. That you know, that's pretty much why I like some of the sports I like. Now, the fact that you're obviously at US college doing it, basketball is good. That is good. That is a positive. That you're getting education out of it, and you're playing. For me, I never enjoyed basketball. Okay, never enjoyed it. I enjoyed rugby. I did. I enjoyed cricket. I enjoyed what you would call soccer, what I would call football. Um, and I enjoy ice hockey because I've been watching it since I was 3 years old, and I've had friends who played it, so I actually do understand the sport. I may not have played ice hockey. I've played field hockey and roller hockey, but I do enjoy it because, again, it's the way the sport is played, and it, I had that connection straight away. With basketball, I never had that connection. That I'm enjoying it because of my negative experiences, and those negative experiences won't go away. Um, they stick with you. I but no, I found rugby a good release for my angst, and my anger and my frustration with the fact that um, you know uh, I was let down by by school, and I was, yeah, my school days aren't fond memories. They're not fond memories of my school days, and I don't want to remember them, to be honest. But it's where my love of sport came from, was my school days. It was one of the few things that I enjoyed at school, was either watching or playing sport. I didn't really enjoy school much, and that's a problem. And yeah, yeah, it is what it is. But no, I get asked why I don't enjoy the NBA as much. After school, I mean, when I outside of school, because obviously in the UK, um, oh yeah, I mean, I'm not the biggest guy, but I've had a fair few concussions. This is why when I do videos on player welfare, or players getting injured, I'm very critical of the fact that not enough is. I mean, this is where the NHL is now coming to terms with the CTE lawsuit, and are finally admitting, yeah, okay. And when I did my video today on the NHL Department of Player Safety and their inconsistency, if they are serious about taking headshots out of the game, stay consistent with the ruling. Um, you know, yeah, it's more mental toughness in sport. Yeah, you've got to be physically able to take it. And now my body now is suffering for my rugby sins when I was 20 years old, and I'm nearly 30 now. So about 10 years ago, I was playing again at amateur level, and yeah, my body is feeling the abuse. And this is another thing, because I've played the sport at amateur level and I played at youth level. I know what happens when you have a concussion. I've had it. I mean, look, my nose is not the most straight thing in the world. It's a bit conked. I know what it's like to take a knee to the head and be knocked out. I know what it's like to be collared round the head and get knocked out. Size has got nothing to do with it. I've seen people, players not tackle properly, get their head on the wrong side and knock themselves out. I've seen some leg breaks, I've seen neck breaks, I've seen collarbones, I've seen ribs. I've done my own ankle, I've done my own shoulder. I mean, you've got to keep, you feel it, and I'm feeling it now. I mean, my body's now, and I'm in agony now daily. I've got neck and shoulder problems. I've got back problems. I've got knee issues. I'm 28 and I need to have multiple surgeries. If I was to be a professional, I'd be having multiple surgeries, and my career would be very threatened. I mean, you just got to look at Sam Warburton. He's only a year older than me. He's no longer able to play because of his neck and shoulder. It's gone. Would you come to a Pacers game? Look, I've been invited to actually a fair few sporting to watch, various sports by subscribers and viewers. And you know what? Even though I'm not a basketball fan, I would like to at least experience it inside the arena and go, okay, I've done it now. It may or may not change my view on it. As I say, I'm a casual viewer. I'm not invested in the sport. I'm not saying it's a bad sport, and I'm not saying it's not a fun sport, but for me, I don't enjoy it. That's not to say I wouldn't enjoy going to a game and just to see what the atmosphere of a match night atmosphere is like in North America. That's one thing. And a second thing, basketball arenas are also used for ice hockey, so it gives me an idea of what an NHL arena would look like for seating up in the upper bowl and the lower bowl. Yeah, the floor pan's going to have ice on it and plexiglass, but I also want to go to an NHL game, so that gives me an idea of what the facilities are actually really like inside, because I've seen them on TV, but I haven't been there in person, and I know how insanely sports mad the North America is. LeBron James. I mean, that's insane. That you're in college with his son. That is mad. I mean, I did a video actually on his contract and how obscene the amount of money was, because I do believe that is a crazy amount of money just for bouncing a ball and dunking it, personally. Because over here in the UK, there is a massive, massive debate about player salaries, the amount of money in sport are the lower levels where the money isn't great. And we're talking not a lot of money. I mean, my local ice hockey team, I mean, Christ, there was one season where the players went unpaid for 6 months. So when you're talking about elite level sport and the amount of money some of these athletes are paid, it's a lot of money. A lot of money for one man or a team of men. I understand, obviously, the salary cap is in place and the NBA is happy with that. The players' unions are happy with that. The teams are happy with that. The owners are happy with that. It's one of the few leagues where there is no unrest, labour unrest, which, unlike the NHL, the NBA has had its labour unrest in the 80s, doesn't have it anymore. Partly because Gary Bettman is no longer working for the NBA, he's now working for the NHL. That's another debate that we can have about Gary Bettman and the fact I dislike him because of all the labour stoppages and the fact that it makes the players seem greedier than they actually are, and it makes the owners seem really greedy as well. It's rich people arguing about who can be richer, and that's an issue, and that's a PR nightmare, especially when, as we've seen over the last decade, people like me, our average wage is not great. I've had to work some pretty crappy jobs, and I've had to go in and out of work for lengthy spells, in and out of employment for various reasons. And the debate over player salaries, player wages, how much an elite level player is worth, how much they should get paid, is a very big debate over here. I'm not sure what it's like in the US and Canada when it comes to player wages, and are they entitled to have X amount of millions a year or millions per contract. But over here in the UK, it is a big debating point. Okay, but interesting. Look, I mean, I've had several American college students as subscribers or viewers over the last year and a half, and it is very interesting the way the US system of youth development of players for sport is so different to the European style. Obviously, the North American sport is franchise based, and the European leagues are club based, where the youth development happens within club and goes up to the first team in a sort of pyramid structure within that club. Whereas in the US, I've done a video on this, so if you want to check out the what's the video I did? The differences between the European and American sports is the North American system is franchise based, with the draft system and a collegiate system if that system is applicable. I know you've got the junior leagues and minor leagues as well when it comes to ice hockey. When you look at the European system, it's more club based, so it goes through a youth development program, the youth levels within a club, and then they get into the reserves and then into the first team. So if we're talking about, like, say, Man United, for example, they have a youth academy, and it goes up through the levels. And it's a league system with promotion relegation, which is a very alien concept to a lot of North Americans with this promotion relegation system that European football and rugby and all the various sports have predominantly. Ice hockey, not so much, but a lot of the sports have um, this promotion relegation system, and that's a very alien concept to North Americans. And the franchise system is not as much of an alien concept now because we are seeing it slowly come into some sports, such as the Elite League ice hockey here in the UK. We are slowly seeing a change in some sports, but it's interesting having the debate between the difference in sporting cultures. Here, a lot of our teams are very community based. They were founded in the community 100 odd years ago. And it's very rare for them to move out of that community entirely. A couple have, but not many. In the North America, you get teams relocated all the time, or used to. I know I've got a few NBA fans as subscribers and viewers, but I don't know the exact numbers because the way they are doing the analytics now on the data, I don't know the geography of where people are watching from and all sorts. They're changing it because they're changing the YouTube Creator Studio, which is just a pile of crap. At the moment, I don't have a passport or enough money to go see a Pacers game. It would be nice, to visit, North America and then and see, the sports out there. It's not just basketball. It's the whole thing really. It's just the cost of getting there and finding a hotel and a variety of other things. But I would definitely, depending on how the channel goes and other circumstances mine, of course, I would happily fly halfway across the world to watch a sport that I'm not a big fan of. But it's an experience, and I do have a bucket list, and I do want to see more of the world. I mean, I've seen a lot of Europe. I've seen enough of Europe for me to hate it. I've been all over Europe, and I wouldn't mind trying Canada and the US and having a little look at how they do the sports night, entertainment, how they do the whole match night experience. It's a lot different. I know that, but but we'll have to see obviously what happens down the line. Of course, I would love to go to the US and watch a game and experience a US style match night. It's a lot different. I mean, if you were to come over here to the UK to watch football, what we call football, what you call soccer, or a rugby match, rugby league match, British ice hockey match, which is completely different to the NHL style of things, you would find our match night experience a hell of a lot different. There are a lot of similarities because they're picking up a lot of these Americanisms, as I call it, where they're bringing in more of the cheerleaders and more of the mascot things, but the match night experience is a lot different, and the sporting culture is a lot different, and it's very interesting to sort of merge those cultures a little bit and see the difference. But no, I'm more than happy to take up your offer at some point. It's just to do with that I don't have a passport and I don't have a lot of funds for getting to America and finding a place to stay in America. And probably I'm going to end up breaking a lot of laws in America because there are things in America that are illegal that are legal here and vice versa. So that's going to be interesting. I'm going to have to get a guidebook out and see where I cannot get in trouble. I'll probably end up in Vegas or something just for giggles, and get on the wrong flight and go, by the way, yeah, I'm not at the Pacers game tonight. I'm at a Golden Knights game. I've gone to the wrong arena. Oh, I wasn't going to do that. Okay. That's probably what I'm going to end up doing. But I've been invited out to Toronto. I've been invited out to Abbotsford in Vancouver. I've been invited out to Winnipeg. I've been invited out to where else have I been invited? There's a couple other North American subscribers who offered the the possibility of going to the US or Canada to catch a game. Well, no, I probably would end up in Vegas actually, or Reno, or the Bunny Ranch, or somewhere crazy like that in Nevada, and just end up going. By the way, I've ended up in the wrong place. There appears to be naked ladies and large amounts of them, and pom poms and bright lights, but it's not where I want to be. Um, but no, it would be interesting because it would give me a better idea of what it's like to go to an NBA game, what it's like to be involved in a basketball match, and what the it's going to be very, very interesting. I'm more than happy as the channel grows and things like that to, yeah, obviously take that step and go to the US for a long crazy weekend of craziness, because yeah, there is a lot of things that I do want to experience. There are some parts of the US that I do want to visit, and that may be a good way to, I don't know, have an American road trip or something. There are some places in the US that I do want to visit. There are some individual places that I want to visit, like the muscle car graveyard thing that they have near Dallas. Um, there are a few places I want to go. There's a fair few teams that I would like to see play. Obviously, as an NHL fan, first and foremost. Um, is that the Indiana? That's the Indiana Pacers. Oh God, I've got to check out the NBA Pacers. I've got to see where they're based now. I've got to remember. I've completely forgotten where the Pacers are based. That's really annoying. Um, I thought it was Indiana, so the middle bit. Yeah, my geography's playing. It's just interesting because I like the fact we can have this debate in the comment section and have this discussion, and it's all friendly. I mean, I do. Oh, no. Okay, Indiana. Indiana is an interesting place. I just think that each individual state in the US is a very interesting um, place. There's some interesting history behind a lot of them. No, but there are definitely things I want to see and experience, and going to North America is part of that. I always want to do Canada as well as a sporting road trip, um, and it would be fun to do that for YouTube. Actually, go around and actually live stream some of the stuff and do some videos and stuff like that. And it would be an experience. I mean, coming from my sporting background, basketball is not on my sporting background. I mean, my granddad played non-league, what you would call soccer, non-league football. My dad played non-league football, and then he ended up playing rugby and football for the British Army. My other granddad used to play hockey for England, as in field hockey. So as um, as my direct family, it's quite a sporty family in that sense. And then my one of my friends from school now plays professional rugby union for Bath. Um, you should get my mate. He owns a truck. He works nights, so I guess he'd be the guy to take you to. Oh God, I'm gonna. Oh no, if I have to explain to my friends and family. Oh, by the way, I'm not in Indiana at the moment. I'm now in Manitoba. I'm freezing my ass off. It's -30, and I'm stuck somewhere near Winnipeg by a frozen lake, and there's a bear and he's looking hungry. I don't think my family would be best pleased, or my travel insurance. It would be an experience. I would definitely, like to experience just the North American sporting experience. That's basically it. The North American sporting experience is what I would like to see. Is just how they do a match night and how they do a match day experience, because I know it's a lot different over here in the UK. It's a lot different. On the same token, there's a big debate about, obviously, the North American leagues taking games on this international series, be it ice hockey or NBA, the NHL, the NBA, NFL, and Major League Baseball, MLB, taking pro games over here. Because there's a debate about us as Europeans taking our pro sports over there. Rugby union does it and rugby league does it. Football is a different beast because there's a bit of unrest about that, and not all fans are happy with rugby union, rugby league taking games in North America either. So that's an interesting debating point. I know the NBA has been over here to the UK, to London, and played games at the O2 with Boston Celtics last year. Massive debating point on would there ever be an NBA or an NHL or an NFL franchise over in Europe, all franchises, and what would the North American fans feel on that? I know for the most part, European fans are a bit undecided. When it comes to ice hockey, they're against. When it comes to the American football and the basketball, they're indifferent. But I'll be interested to know what from a North American fan what your viewpoint is on the international series games coming to Europe and other places around the world. So it doesn't matter if it's basketball or the NHL or the NFL or Major League Baseball taking games outside of North America and planting them in Europe or Asia or wherever it may be, because it's an interesting topic. It's an interesting talking point. So it's a big discussion point in British sporting society at the moment with the failure by Sahih Khan, the guy who owns the Jacksonville Jaguars, in his attempt to buy Wembley. So I'll be very interested to hear your viewpoint on if you were to make it to the NBA, for example. Let's say you make it to the NBA and you play in the NBA, and your franchise has got to play a game in the O2. Let's say you're playing for the Miami Heat. There you go. That's an East Coast team. I don't know why I thought the Miami Heat, and you've got to play. I don't know the Memphis Grizzlies or something. We'll say the Memphis Grizzlies. I'm just plucking teams out of the top of my head to make an idea of what I'm trying to say. And you've been told, you're fixtured to play the World Series game in London at the O2, back to back. You've got to play 2 games in London. How would you feel? Because you've got to factor in travel, the jet lag, the timings, because we're 5 hours ahead of the East Coast here in England, and all this. And yes, there is a fan base for Major League Sports here. There is. We know that. But how would you feel as a player or as a fan of the NBA? Let's say you're a fan of the NBA. Let's say your Pacers, your beloved Pacers, they've got to play the Boston Celtics in London. Would you be happy to travel all the way to the UK and pay large amounts of money, considering that the British currency is fluctuating all the time and we've got loads of economic crap going on, political crap going on? Would you be happy as an Indiana Pacers fan to have your team play a regular season game outside of North America in the UK? That's a question that I want to see answered. I actually want to see what the answer is, because it interests me, because we're seeing a big debate on European sport going to North America to play regular season games and fans and players being against it. So you're in favour of it, okay? Well, over here in Europe, the Spanish soccer league, La Liga, wants to take regular season games over to the US. And the players' union and the fans are like, yeah, you're not doing that. Nope. And La Liga are saying, no, we are. And then the players are saying, you take our regular season games to America, 1 game a season or however many games a season, we'll go on strike. We will refuse to play. So you're saying you'll be happy to do that as a fan or as a player to go and play a game abroad as part of an international series. It's interesting. It is actually very, very interesting, because it's a big debating point. It's just an interesting question that I ask because I know you're from Indiana, and it's just a question I ask. If let's say the Pacers were to play in London, you'd be happy to travel from Indiana to London to watch a game. That is very interesting, because over here in Europe, fans aren't necessarily so happy of our major sports going over to North America to grow rugby union, rugby league, and what we call football, what you call soccer over in the US. Our fans not so happy to do that. So really interesting. I'm going to have to apologise because my connection's gone a little bit poor. So on that note, while the connection's going to be struggling for a while, I'm going to call that a night. I really appreciate Paces Forever. I really appreciate some of your questions as well, and your invite to Indiana as well. Joy Ganja, you've always come up with some good questions as well. Ben, I know you came in late, but thank you. My internet connection isn't great, so I'm going to call it a night. Thank you very, very much, guys, for all your questions. I understand I'm probably pixelating right now. You probably can't hear me, but I really appreciate all the questions you put in and all the discussion that we've had. I just had a little message come up on my webcam video screen saying your connection's unstable, which is a pain in the ass because I've got full signal, but I'm assuming the weather outside is having a little bit of fun screwing with my internet. So, but no, guys, honestly, thank you for all the questions and thank you for the invite to a Pacers game. I will definitely have to consider that as time goes on. I've had a lot of invites from all around the world to go to games, and it literally comes down to logistics and money on my end to be able to get to your location to then go to a game, and then I've got to find accommodation while I'm there. So it's something to think about, and I really appreciate you guys asking the questions. Um, but no, I shall see you guys soon. Bit of a slow burner this live stream. It started a bit slow, but if you missed anything at the beginning, feel free to watch from the beginning and watch me all the way through. Because I do start out like a bit more of a podcast at the beginning, and then somehow out of nowhere, loads of people started asking questions, which was helpful. So thank you very much, guys, and good night or good afternoon.